Need a motion to move?
Okay, well, we'll call the meeting to order in regular session. We'll first order of business. We do have a quorum. Dispense with introductions. Move into there's some discussion on the agenda today. Well, is there any changes to the agenda? Is there a motion to approve the agenda today? Motion is there a second?
Second.
Motion is second. All those discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. We move on to consideration of executive session pursuant to Colorado Revised Statute sections 246402 4B and F1. The board in open session to determine whether we'll hold a closed executive session. The issues to be discussed in all personal matters related to the annual evaluation of the executive director of PPACG. The chair shall poll the board members, and upon consent of 2/3 of the members present, may hold a closed executive session. If consent to the executive session is not granted, given, the item may be discussed in open session or withdrawn from consideration. Is there a motion?
Motion to move into executive session.
Question? Right?
It's okay, you guys are here, so it'll pick it up.
Second.
Okay, thank you. Oh, thank you. Okay, if you could have everybody move toward your seats, please. We'll try to get started at 9:15, please. Thanks for everybody for your patience. We had an executive session this morning. Move toward your seats, please. We'll get started on time. Who made the motion?
Not it, you're first. Support military.
All right, buddy, for your patience this morning, we opened our day this morning with an executive session to discuss the performance evaluation of our executive director. No decisions were made. The results of that meeting will appear on the December agenda for action. We'll pick up our agenda with reintroductions. We'll start around the table here. My name is Norm Steen, Teller County Commissioner, currently serving as your chair. Jill?
Jill Gabler from Colorado Springs.
Neil Levy, Woodland Park.
Yolanda Avila, Colorado Springs.
Andy Pico, Colorado Springs.
Ken Geray, Manitou Springs.
Tyler Stevens, Green Mountain Falls.
Melissa Porter, Air Force Academy.
Ron Jeffrey, 50th Space Wing, Schriever Air Force Base.
Michael Brennan, 21st Space Wing, Peterson Air Force Base, Cheyenne Mountain.
Tech Sergeant Erica Picarello, I'm Public Affairs at the 21st Space Wing at Peterson.
Terry Storm, PPACG representative from the Military Affairs Council of the Chamber and EDC.
Dick Elsner, Park County.
Sharon Thompson, City of Fountain.
Holly Williams, Secretary, El Paso County.
Thank you very much. Once again, we do have a quorum. We went to public comments, item 4. First is Melissa Martz for a presentation. Public comments.
Oh, public comments.
Melissa, welcome.
I'm right here, Melissa.
Yeah, hi there.
Good morning, Board. I'm Melissa Martz. I'm the Program Development Administrator for the Area Agency on Aging. And I wanted to let folks know today that the Area Agency on Aging was the recipient of a grant from Next 50 Foundation up in Denver to do home sharing for older adults. And so we will be partnering with an organization called Sunshine Home Share based out of Denver. They're going to be providing a staff person here in Colorado Springs to do that work of getting older adults who are living on their own and want to stay in their home to be matched up with an individual who wants to live with them and help do chores, help do additional jobs around the house for somewhat of a reduced rent, and sometimes even no rent at all, depending on what's going on. It's estimated that folks who are over 85 years old, 50% of them are living alone. And so we want to be able to offer resources and help to those folks, and we also want to be able to help people who have a really hard time finding affordable housing. And so kind of combining the two things together, that's what we're up to. And we should have a person on board here kind of mid-December and doing the outreach in the community by January. And so if you have any questions, I'm here to answer those. And then I also have a handout that talks a little bit more about it, and so I'll hand that around, and we're looking forward to making a difference for those folks.
Thank you, Melissa.
All right.
Appreciate that. Karen Morgan, if I could ask you to come up, please. Karen is a longtime employee, actually 5 years. We're going to recognize her for 5 years of service to PPACG as an employee.
And Gretchen Bricker is coming up with her. Well, Gretchen's coming up. If you'll recall, back to the previous item, in the 4-year plan that was adopted for the AAA services earlier this year, providing affordable housing was one of the key recommendations that came out of this, of the announcement that Melissa just made. It's really kind of a small part of the bigger, complex solution to providing affordable housing for seniors, so we're really thrilled about that. So with that, Gretchen.
Hi, I'm Gretchen Bricker. I am the supervisor of the direct services team at the Area Agency on Aging. I have the honor of giving a little bit of to introducing Karen and recognizing her. Karen recently told me that she loves working in insurance. It's what she's done for several years, and even before working with the Area Agency on Aging, she brought that expertise and that passion with her to the Area Agency on Aging. One of the contributions that she's made as a case manager in the SHIP counselor, which means Senior Health Information and Assistance Program, has been developing a relationship with the southern counties that we serve as part of our SHIP area and assisting those rural clients with their insurance needs. We're very lucky to have her at the Area Agency on Aging and now celebrating her 5th anniversary. Congratulations, Karen.
Karen, on behalf of the board, just want to thank you for your service. It's obviously people like you who make us a capable organization connected with the people we serve. Thank you for dedication every single day. Got a small plaque for you. Pikes Peak Area Council of Governments presented to Karen Morgan in recognition of 5 years of service and performance to PPACG, since 2014, September 4, 2014, Andrew Gunning, Executive Director, Northern Teen Chair. Thank you so much for your service.
Thank you.
And just a small gift.
Oh, cool. Thank you very
You're welcome.
much.
Any comments?
So, thank you. My only comment is, honestly, actually, I've been with PPACG and the AAA for 8 years. I started as a volunteer at the Area Agency on Aging and then worked as a part-time SHIP counselor before becoming a full-time employee here. So it has been my pleasure and my honor to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. And then I think Andy has a new employee introduction.
Yeah, one last announcement. I want to introduce Mark Northrop, transportation planner. Mark is standing back there in the back. Just joined us yesterday. Today's second day on the job. Joins us from DRCOG. Spent about 15, 16 years in the Denver region. So thank you to Dr. Cog for training him and allowing us to steal him away. So it fills out our transportation planning team, our awesome team now, so we're back up to full strength. So thank you, Mark. You're going to see Mark around helping out with the TIP and the long-range plan and a bunch of other special projects. So I want to welcome Mark.
All right,
So,
thank you. I'd like to invite Jason. He had a comment from Silver Key, I think.
Thank you and good morning. I want to share with you that rarely does Silver Key's board take a stance about some issue that's affecting the region as they have chosen to do this time. And I want to make sure you're all aware of this because it has a profound impact potentially on all the systems that we have that support individuals that have behavioral health needs, both seniors and individuals with disabilities. What the issue is that in the Region 7 of the Medicaid behavioral health services, which is Park, El Paso, and Teller, there's a proposal to reduce the rate of pay by another 20% for the provider network. What that means is licensed counselors, professional counselors, social workers, and addiction counselors, and licensed marriage and family therapists. If this goes through, those that are serving Medicaid will receive a reduction of 20%. The challenge with that is that there's already a significant amount of access issues for individuals that have treatment needs related to behavioral health care, both on the mental health and substance misuse issues. So I bring this forward to you because our board has decided that we would take a stance on this and ask and advocate for all those that are connected with seniors or individuals with disabilities to go to Silver Key's social media presence, which we have several of them, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, all of the, take a look at those, and that's where this issue is posted. In that description of the issue, there's also a petition. The petition is intended to be able to raise the voice of the communities that are impacted by this, and I would ask all of you to think about at least learning about the issue. If we have a reduction in already reduced compensation for providers at that 20% rate. What that'll mean is providers will not be able to accept new clients or continue to provide the services to the clients they already serve. What that translates to, you may be in transit, you may be in other kind of service areas. What that translates to is when you have people that are undertreated or not treated with behavioral health care needs, and they're taking our ridership and they're involved with different transit, this means that they're having a lot more challenge being able to be part of the community. It is wrong, and it's important that you become aware because it is impacting the people that we serve.
Question for Jason.
This is managed through healthcare policy and finance at the state level. The question is it federal dollars? And so what happens is that this is impacting at the state level, and the organization that is making this decision is the administrative arm of Medicaid for behavioral health called Colorado Community Health Alliance, and it's called the RAE, the Regional Accountable Entity. This is something that we would be able to provide more information to you, again, on the website, or you can email me directly, jdebueno@silverkey.org, and I can share more information. Yes, sir.
Just to clarify, if I understood you correctly, it's federal dollars, but it's managed by the state?
It's federal and state dollars that go through the state system because there's a state
both.
match. It's both, yeah. The Medicaid includes both federal and state dollars, and it's got an administrative arm in healthcare policy and finance that administer for service delivery.
Thanks.
Okay, any other questions?
I guess I'm a little confused because I thought Polis's significant other had made healthcare his primary, one of his primary interests, and they were doing a study this summer on it.
Yes, so there's a group that a governor has moved forward to be able to learn about what the impacts of an underfunded or under-resourced system for behavioral health care access. The problem is this is happening January 1st. The decision was made last month. So while they're aware of that, there has not been any intervention at this point to be able to stop this process. So you're right, there's going to be an understanding about what those issues are, but this may mean that it's already left this train's already left the station if this happens, and to be able to step back from that after those kind of understandings is a little bit of a problem, which is why, again, Silver Key's board had said we are going to take a stand on this now because something needs to happen before that time. But you're absolutely right. There's a strong amount of support at the governor's office to be able to improve the behavioral health care system, and this is happening deeper in the system right now.
Very good. Thank you, Jay.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. Is there anybody for other public comment? Deborah?
Deborah Stout-Meininger, community advocate, citizen scientist. I've become aware of some more complications about when the toll road fees go into effect as far as a collections dimension of it. For the public information, I've not found this online, but I have from quite a few people who use the E470 on a regular basis, that if those monthly bills are not paid, somewhere around the fourth notification of non-payment for the toll road fees that will go to the public at their home address, that it can affect how much they have to pay to renew the plates, because that will be included in any delinquent amounts from the toll road fees when they go to renew the plates on their cars. So that particular point, I think, needed to have more public attention, because I could not find that in the collection information that was online with the Transportation Authority in regards to the toll roads in El Paso, in Colorado. But that is from quite a few people that I've talked to who have traveled E470 on a regular basis, and the rules that apply to that will be the rules that apply to El Paso County and our highway as well when it goes through on the extended amount that CDOT is saying they're going to do for the toll roads. So just as a heads up for the community to share with all our groups and members, because we don't need any more surprises than we already have with toll roads. Thank you.
Thank you, Deborah. Is there any other for public comment? Seeing none, move on to item 5A. Would any board member like to pull item off for separate consideration? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Motion? Second, in discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Consent agenda is approved. Information item 6A, Front Range Rail Governance Options. Mr. Karzian. Okay, and while he's coming up, Jill, why don't you make the introduction?
Thank you, Chair. First, I just want to again congratulate the employees that were mentioned today. Mark coming on, and was it Karen, and then Melissa, who got this amazing grant. I just can't stop smiling. It's so exciting. So congratulations to all of you. As the chair of the Front Range Passenger Rail Commission, we are looking into governance options for how we might potentially fund a Front Range Rail. And we have been looking at this for the last few months, and today Mr. Karzian, who works with CDOT, is going to explain the different governance options to us, and mostly we just kind of want your feedback, your thoughts on it. It's certainly not a decision item, but we certainly also don't want to make this decision in a vacuum without reaching out to the COGS and getting your thoughts. This is really how we would create some sort of entity that would oversee a rail authority in some regard, and what that might look like. So with that, I'll hand it over to Andy, and he will completely confound all of us. But,
the wrong C were confused. It was confounded. They were close.
It's very exciting times, and it's very hopeful for us to finally have a sustainable transportation option along our Front Range. So thank you, Andy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Jill. My name is Andy Karzian. I am the legislative liaison for CDOT. I'll be brief. We have been having conversations about Front Range passenger rail. As you know, there's an existing commission. Jill is the vice chair of the commission right now. They are responsible for taking a look at, and they were legislatively directed to take a look at what are some possibilities in developing a service development plan for a passenger rail along the Front Range. What that includes is taking a look at possibilities. What would it take to get us to that point to where we can start entering into an official land use, federally approved land use process, the NEPA process. Everything, thank goodness that was closed. Everything that we are doing up to now is preparing us up for that more formal process. What we're not doing now is identifying specific funding amounts or locations or types of funding. We're not going to know what the route will be, where the tracks will be laid, where stations will be. All of the conversations right now are preparing us for future conversations. We're not ready to have those alternative conversations right now. So what these options are legislative options that would create enabling legislation similar to how the local governments would create a regional transportation authority or a public highway authority. There's statute that exists currently to allow local governments to do that. So the idea on this is build off of something that has been successful in the past, as opposed to recreating the wheel for a passenger rail authority that we haven't been able to, dive down into the details yet because we're not there yet. So with that said, here's what we've been discussing so far. There have been 4 options. The first 2 are the primary options. I'm going to spend most of the time on those, and then I'll briefly talk about some of the third and fourth option. But the first option is the broadest, enabling legislation that would allow local governments to partner and have a conversation about creating a passenger rail authority. There would not be a boundary in statute. That would be left open to future discussions. Again, no specific funding opportunities identified, but in the statute it would say that a future governing board could go to the voters for funding, be it property tax, sales tax, lodging, right? There's a variety of different options that could be used. The reason that there's multiple options is they didn't want to, the statute for a regional transportation authority and the public highway authority wants to lay out some possibilities in the future. Property tax may not be the most relevant. Sales tax may be. may not be. We want to have those options on the table as we get closer to some more specificity in the future. Also, on the first one, it would be a variety of different powers. The enabling legislation would set up, once the local governments entered into an agreement with each other and started having these conversations, they could create an authority by passing a resolution. That resolution is then verified at the state level, and you've got the creation of a rail authority. We want to make it simple to create a passenger rail authority. That passenger rail authority in the future would still have to go to the voters in order to get any funding, anything to continue to move it forward. Final approval of a plan, final approval of the route, stations. These would be, matters that the governing body would take up in conversations with their regional partners, be it Pikes Peak, Council of Governments, El Paso County, Denver, Dr. Cog, RTD, the federal government. All of those folks would be players in this conversation, and so all of those conversations would be had at a future date. This enabling legislation would allow them to, as I said, create that broad authority so that they can take advantage of it in the future. That's the very broad enabling legislation. The high-level options are available for future conversations. The second option would be a bit more specific. It would create a boundary for that rail district. It would be very, very similar to what I just described, all of the specific powers, funding authorities, future conversations, collaborations, but we would have a boundary-specific piece of legislation to offer to, offer up to the legislature and to run that bill. Some of the benefits of that are it allows the specific localities and the local governments within that specific boundary to start having those conversations. Kind of, you are on notice, this is going to be an option moving forward. Come to the table and have conversations with us, and we're moving forward with that specific boundary idea. One of the cons to that idea is it's a specific boundary. So you are limiting options, say, for I-70 to jump into a conversation about passenger rail, or maybe even spurs off into other areas if we discount a Weld County or a Boulder or some other county in the boundaries. There could be some language that is similar to the Regional Transportation Authority right now, where local governments and counties would be able to join into the boundary at a future date if they wanted to. So the option would be there, but option two would basically create the district along the Front Range with specific boundaries in place. Those are the main ideas. Those are the ones that we're really pursuing. Again, enabling legislation does not create a rail district right now. The idea would be, since we are not ready, we're doing this service development plan, we're not ready to have those specific conversations on where the rail would travel along I-25, or would it go up US 36 and back down to Fort Collins that way? Would it go straight up I-25? We're not there yet. So why should we create a district that has that level of specificity? Doing the enabling legislation also allows us to continue having conversations in venues like this. As we continue on, there may be better ideas. We can amend the legislation. We can, create additional legislation in the future to make it more specific or less specific, depending on what the conversations are in the future. The last two options that we've discussed in the past were to create an enterprise for a passenger rail, and that would be a passenger rail enterprise similar to the high-performance transportation enterprise that we have currently at CDOT. One of the pros on that is it allows a bit more flexibility in working with private entities, financing, bonding. Obviously, if it's an enterprise, all of the revenue isn't counted towards a TABOR limit, so there's some benefits to that. Some of the cons to that, some fairly significant cons, are it would be adding additional bureaucracy. We're creating a new enterprise within a department that can create some costs that would not be incurred under other options. And under current statutory authority for an enterprise, there are limitations on the amount of money that we can collect from private individuals. So there would have to be a different kind of enterprise created, and that could create perceptions or confusion legislatively. And then the final option is we take the current Southwest Chief Commission and we change it statutorily to be a broader commission, to give them a broader scope, broader mission, and direct them to look at passenger rail beyond what they are currently, and have them officially and legislatively look at moving this conversation into the future, whether that be this broader authority look or something different along those lines, but kind of give them that opportunity in expanding their current mission that's in statute to take a look at the Southwest Chief and Front Range Rail. Those are our 4 options that we've taken a look at. Again, we're mostly looking at those first two options, and I'd be happy to answer any questions and confuse you further.
Questions for Mr. Karzian? Again, this is not a decision point, but this information sharing. Whether or not we bring this to a future decision of the board, it would be, a call we'd make the next few weeks, I would guess. Andy?
Yeah, thank you. I've been somewhat skeptical about how well Front Range Rail, I think Southwest Chief is a great idea, but Front Range Rail is kind of like the next step, and it's more a function, I think, of transit up and down the corridor, rail just being one of several technical options. I think those studies are still in progress, and the point I think I've made before elsewhere is that you kind of ought to wait for the studies to come back before you jump down too far the technical decision, whether it's rail or some other option. Having said that, you've got what you're talking about here is merely the governance options, doesn't presume any of those particular things. And I'm in favor of you studying any of those options. Each one, all 4 of those options had pros and cons to them. And I would be hesitant to say pick 1 or 2 to study. I think you ought to keep all 4 on the table. There's some definite things. The enterprise example, we've struggled with that here locally and found out some of the pros and cons and what will and won't work, and it has been a problem. It has derailed a couple of ideas that we've had, but the flip side is once in place, it's got some advantages. So I would encourage you to continue to keep all 4 of those options under study and come back and let the legislative analysts, the legislature, and everybody come up. One thing that occurred to me as you went down the, give the local agencies or municipalities and so forth the option in, sounds a lot like the enhanced NPO option we heard the other day at the governor's conference. So I think there's kind of a nexus in there, which is something that we all ought to have a discussion about anyway. So I'd encourage you to keep everything on the table for a study.
Good. Thank you.
Other questions? Andy, where is the decision made? Who will make the final decision? Because you're going to look simply for a recommendation, I guess, from PPACG.
Who will make the final decision? That's a great question, sir.
And suppose there's disagreement on recommendations. That's the other. Dr. Cog has a different view than PPACG.
Well, I think ultimately it comes down to what the Front Range Rail Commission wants to do. And, because we're at a place right now where there's an opportunity for that commission to continue directing and to build the stakeholder groups and that broad-based support of passenger rail. We know that it's a good idea. We know that it can help out and it can be a good tool in collaboration with everything else that we're doing. So we have the experts in a commission right now. I think they're the ones that will be the point of the spear moving the conversation forward. And with that said, if we are going to pull the trigger on legislation this year, we have to pull it fairly quickly. And so there may be a draft bill that is going to come out, and then we can continue having conversations around that. And if that moves forward or it doesn't move forward, that's part of the legislative process as well.
Would you see ever engaging individual counties and cities, municipalities at their local level of governance?
We were thinking about, and Joe, please speak more on this, about engaging with the other MPOs to have conversations.
So
Not the MPOs, but cities. With city council.
We have we're having stakeholder meetings right now, and there's one here at PPACG tomorrow at 1:30. The chamber will be there, Downtown Partnership will be there, representatives from all over the region will be there to provide input on this and more in regard to what they see passenger rail as being to support their entity or the region. So those conversations are going on right now. The commission will make a decision, but I mean, we have to make a decision that the legislature would support. So that is the ultimate goal, to create some entity, whether it's growing or changing the existing commission, creating a rail authority that has to be something the legislature would support and want to move forward. So that is the goal. And I mean, we can't do this just with our own little silos. We have to work with the entire region, possibly the whole state, to accomplish something.
Kind of the political aspect, I mean, if you're going to go option one, statewide, I mean, you're going to go to a statewide ballot, I assume.
Yes.
And if you go to the second option, which is boundary limited, would you only those boundaries, only those jurisdictions would vote? Or would the total state vote on a local, yeah, we vote that they pay for it?
It would just be those areas.
That's my question.
Yeah, so it wouldn't be, we would call it a statewide passenger rail district, just because we'd want to, we could also just as well call it an interstate passenger rail district. Okay. It's unlikely that we're going to be developing passenger rail out to Brush or down to Divide, right? Just because economically it's not going to be feasible.
It's up, but
it'd be nice, but it's, we'd love to have it all over. But what we're really looking at is the interstates, and when we say statewide, we want to be inclusive of the I-70 corridor. So the intent would be, if we create enabling legislation to allow for a statewide conversation, in reality, those counties along the interstate corridors are the ones that are going to be having the conversations. They will follow, I mean, the one idea is they'll follow kind of that EMPO process to create a district. Then once that district is created, then there would be a vote. So it wouldn't be a statewide vote. The Eastern Plains wouldn't be voting on passenger rail, and Garfield County wouldn't be passing. It would be those entities that created that district for those voters, 50+1 within those local governments.
And obviously looking nationwide on best practices, I hope, right?
Yeah,
certainly
absolutely.
Background there.
So all of those nationwide best practices, what happens if a local government doesn't want to be part of the district? What happens with, all of these variety of different possible questions, hypotheticals. We would continue to have those conversations with the local governments after this enabling legislation would be passed. The enabling legislation doesn't answer all of those questions, just tees up an opportunity to have those conversations. And when the answers are there, we can pull the trigger and do something.
Okay. Other questions for Andy? Points. And then is there a stakeholder meeting tomorrow? Who would be invited to that? Yeah, so starting at 1:30 here, I guess anybody in the region, and I think it goes down into Pueblo County as well. It's this southern portion of the segment for the passenger rail. But yeah, starting at 1:30 here, I think CDOT and the Passenger Rail Commission is looking for feedback from any and all partners along the corridor, so everybody's welcome. Is this a governance comment or a public comment meeting?
It's more leaders of various organizations throughout the region to kind of represent their stakeholder groups. And it's not just about governance. It's about really what they envision or what they would like to see passenger rail look like, so we can begin figuring out what that looks like or what we want to do there.
Okay. Anything else? Thank you, Eddie.
Thank you.
Next item is item 6B, 2020 legislative themes and priorities. Jessica, a lot of work being done here.
Good morning, Board of Directors. Jessica McMullen, your Policy and Communications Manager. So as you saw in your packets, we provided just a little bit of information about what the Legislative Committee does during the session and outside of the session. The committee did meet and discussed what the legislative themes are. You all saw a draft handout similar to the one we used last year. There are a couple of tweaks to images and a place where I was missing a space that have been pointed out to me. Did anybody have any feedback on those themes for the committee to consider?
Information correct, those little nice points.
And then the next thing is after that, the committee did meet last Friday to talk about several things, so I'm going to pass that over to the committee chair to talk about what that was.
Mr. Chair, Dick.
Thank you. I do want to say the brochure is preliminary. Please get comments in. Obviously, the Board of Directors that's listed on the brochure will be changing because our election is in January. So you still have up till then, but we really would like to have all the changes complete. One thing that we did discuss, and it worked really well last year, is we had a meeting down at the state capitol where we invited all of our legislators, and we had some other legislators show up for breakfast. It was a great meeting. We had a chance to talk to them. This legislative session, I think, is going to be very challenging for us, looking at some of the things that are going on with the budget and the cost of some programs that they passed last year that they discovered cost a lot more. One of the things that we really need to pay attention to as an organization is unfunded mandates. I see and have a feeling we're going to have quite a few of those come down to us this year, and anybody that's challenged with a budget like small counties are, that's very, very difficult for us to handle. One thing that we do really want is that when the legislative committee meets, we'll be going through all of the bills that are proposed that could impact our region. We will then go through them. We'll make a decision as to how we feel about them, but we will not do any advocacy one way or the other until they're brought back to this board so the entire board can take a position. In addition to that, and starting off, Norm, our chairman, had a bill that he was talking about that has to do with a study to figure out how we can replace our dwindling gas tax. And it's a study. It's not a bill to do anything yet. It's just we need to figure out how to do it. And then I brought up one issue, too, which has to do with water. In the Front Range, and Teller County, I'm assuming, has the same problem Park County has, and Boulder County, Jefferson County, all of the counties. With the growth in the region, water is becoming much more important. And what we're finding is that the state engineer is starting to say, we're going to breach a lot of your ponds, because these are ponds that may have been there 100 years, but they don't have proper water rights for that pond. Well, the position it puts us in as a rural county, we don't have anything but those ponds for our firefighting efforts. And one of the things that I would like this group to get behind later on, and you can think about it, is just a moratorium for 5 years to say the state is not going to go in, breach any of our ponds, let our fire departments determine which ones are critical for their needs, then work on which ones are proper legal ponds, which ones are not legal ponds, and give the counties and the fire districts a chance to bring those ponds that are not legal. They may have been there 150 years, but they're not legal. Bring those into compliance so we can preserve our water for our firefighting. Urban areas have great water systems where a fire truck can pull up to a hydrant. When you get up into the mountain areas, the fire truck pulls up to a pond and pumps water out to fill it to fight the fires, and we really need to preserve that. And would you care to talk about yours?
So full disclosure, I prepared a draft study bill. I'm not a legislator, but I've read a lot of legislation, so I just presented a concept for a legislation committee, a proposal study of a road usage charge. Most of you know that as vehicles get more efficient, the amount of gas tax collected per vehicle drops dramatically. The state gas collections, I think, peaked in 2013. Even though we have more vehicles on the road, efficiency has gone from, in the really late 70s, from 20 miles per gallon to now in medians, I think, about 30, and then 30 miles per gallon. Electric vehicles, rather, have no gasoline tax. They burn no gasoline. So this proposal was simply to look at what does the trend line go for gas tax collections, how does that trend line meet construction costs and operational cost for CDOT statewide. How does those lines diverge? What technology is out there to address the need? It would look at what the administrative cost of how such a program would be administered, and even look at things like would a Tabor amendment be required to institute a road usage charge statewide? Is that a Tabor issue or is that a fee issue? So it's a study bill only. I have discussed it with two legislators. One was interested, one was not. And I don't know if any of the comments from around the committee, if I have any comments on the proposal. Andy?
Well, I think what you stressed to us, and I'm not sure that came out very clear, was you were focusing on the electric vehicles.
That's correct. The proposal would be to
study electric vehicles.
Study the electric vehicles only, to apply a road usage charge to electric vehicles only, although the legislature could do whatever they please.
They could, but, it's a study, of course, but it was also, I think what you had was to bring it up to a level equivalent to the average gas vehicle.
That's right. So gasoline tax at 22 cents per gallon state, that's 10,000 gallons. It's about $80 to $100 per year, which you, the user, pay on gasoline vehicles to the state for road usage charge. This proposed about a penny per mile, although, again, the actual specific bill could do anything. About a penny per mile, 10,000, that's about $100 per year would be proposed. This is a study only, and there's some interest. But any other people on the board have thoughts on it? Ken?
Yeah, I wonder whether there might be some benefit of broadening it. And when you first talked about it, I appreciate Andy's clarification, because as you were talking about it, I thought, maybe you broadened the concept beyond just electric vehicles, which I think would be an interesting study to say, what would it take in terms of a broader look? Maybe electric vehicles are one part of it, but to me, it's a broader question.
The state has conducted 2 years of study, a pilot program, along with the state of Colorado, Washington, and Oregon. We have 2 years of data, and all vehicles for study. I mean, I had one of those devices in my car. It calculates the amount of fuel used and subtracts the amount paid towards gasoline tax from a total bill on road usage. So it's a net charge on the use by the vehicle. So technology is out there. We don't really understand. Probably many have said we're not really ready for this. Technology is not ready. But at some point, I think we as a state should address the question, and that's simply what this bill does. So again, it's not a recommendation for a specific bill, but in my view, it was just time to bring it into public space for comment. Kenny?
I just have a quick question. Does anybody know whether on the military installations that have gas stations in town, are they exempt from the state one?
Do you pay gas? Do you pay gas tax state?
Absolutely pay gas tax. Absolutely pay gas tax on base gas
both
station.
Federal and state?
Yeah.
Okay.
18 federal, 22 state.
Okay.
No, because driving on state roads.
The only reason I'm asking is if you purchase gas on a Indian reservation, they get the station gets it refunded back to them. Is that correct? Sort of? Is that a generalization?
Well,
that's why I was asking, do they get it refunded?
If you're buying for ag gas, if that vehicle never goes onto a state highway, if you're plowing fields with it, that's different. But I don't think so. I don't know. John?
Mr. Chair, members of the board, typically a gas tax is collected at the point of distribution. So it doesn't doesn't get collected at the mom and pop gas station, it gets rather at the distribution center. So that's where they figure that out. So whether or not that truck then is going to a Indian reservation or military reservation, I'm not sure that they know that. I'm not sure if Andy or you guys know if that sounds about right? Yeah. Of course.
Okay. Anything else on legislative? I don't want to belabor this. Jessica, go ahead.
I do want to add one more thing, which is the Legislative Committee has also been discussing how they're also going to be monitoring federal legislation this year. And there is actually something going on that we got the news from the National Association of Regional Councils regarding the Dignity in Aging Act of 2019. If adopted into law, the bill will reauthorize the Older Americans Act through 2024. And NARC, along with a variety of other organizations, are endorsing and strongly supporting the legislation that has been passed by the House and is now going to the Senate. The Senate has two options: adopt the House bill and send it to the President for signature, which would ensure that Older Americans Act is reauthorized in a timely manner, or the Senate can draft its own bill, which would delay passage of the reauthorization bill.
What we might suggest is that I think the legislative committee is going to meet again in a couple of weeks, probably right after the next board workshop, which we'll talk about later. So maybe we kick this to them and see if they want to make a recommendation, and perhaps we engage. The recommendation from NARC was that we draft letters that we send to our senators and encourage them to move forward with the House bill for the reauthorization. So we'll bring that up with the legislative committee and take it from there.
Yeah. Also, I'm really pleased, Jessica, to see the PPCG/policy website in the front. I think the objective there was the legislator could log on to our website to get a specific position on a specific bill at any point. That's a good move.
We're very excited about it.
Yeah. Anything else on legislative? All right, thank you, Jessica. We'll move on then to item 6C, transportation funding presentation. Mr. Leosados.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I would think it is.
So normally, when people get up, they start with, "I'll be brief." I will not. This is it is a huge topic. Right. Well, we can either do that, or again, Mr. Chair, you're already an hour into your meeting. So what I will attempt to do, but again, making no promises, is kind of skip over some of the slides that I think we've already sort of covered here in the past. That being said, if I do skip over something, someone really has a dying desire to get into in more in depth, slow me down, and I'll go back and do it. But just remember, it is based on what we can do. Thank you. All right. So the first thing I want to say is, over the last couple of months, we've done presentations as staff over the TIP and the long range transportation plan. This month was sort of the dead month before we actually start bringing the long-range transportation back to you for approval. Next month will be the information item, and then January will be adoption. Not for Micah. Hopefully you guys are all good with the plan, and we brought it to you enough times that you're comfortable with it. One of the things we wanted to do sort of in this month was kind of step back and sort of give more of the overall picture of how transportation is funded, how some of these issues are addressed. And Mr. Chair, or actually I think it was Mr. Elsner, Commissioner Elsner, you said something along the line of our dwindling gas tax. Well, this is going to go into some of the reasons why it's dwindling and how it's collected and how we make those decisions. I do want to say that also this is part of the strategic plan that you as the board adopted last year. One of the things that we were given marching orders on is to do a little bit more in public education. So this particular presentation, I desperately need and want your feedback. Maybe not all at once in a vicious sort of way, but phone calls over time saying, hey, you covered this part and we think you could do this better or that better. Because I think this will end up being sort of maybe like three separate, for lack of a better term, rubber chicken lunches. Sort of the public things where we go out to the Rotaries and the Kiwanis and all the other ones. Again, this is a little long for that, but we can break it down into maybe 2 or 3. And again, your input on that would be much appreciated. Finally, as you go through, you'll see some rudimentary graphics. Quite frankly, they're stick figures, because what we're going to do is we're going to take this to a graphic artist and we're going to make it real pretty for the public. But I didn't want to put all that time, money, and effort into putting together a pretty presentation and then have you guys say, well, that's great, but that's not what we wanted you to say. That's not what we had in mind with the strategic plan. We want you to take this other route. So please forgive the graphics. Again, they're anything I could steal off the internet or create myself. But that being said, if you're okay with the concept, again, moving forward as we go out to the public, I'm going to hand everything over to Jessica and our graphic artist, and they're going to make it look super pretty. And then finally, some of the numbers and things that I quote in the presentation are basic general information. It is different in Teller County and in Park County and in El Paso County versus Fountain versus Colorado Springs. So I'm going to talk in generalities. So if you're like, oh no, well specifically in my particular jurisdiction it's a little different, yeah, I'm trying to sort of do that. Otherwise, again, a long presentation would become even longer. So we're trying to do that. So I sent out a draft presentation, El Paso County, Colorado Springs, and CDOT got a lot of great feedback. One of the things I got is sort of start the presentation with kind of tell them what you're going to tell them. So we're going to go over how we figure out what we're going to fund, where does the funding come from, spoiler alert, it's the taxpayer, how much that we're actually paying now, and again, that's a generality, and is the funding actually keeping up with demand? And, you know, the conversation previously sort of ruined that already. You know it's not. All right, so the first part is we're talking about how we fix the projects, well, determine the projects. So remember when you were growing up, the Schoolhouse Rock, how a build becomes a law? Well, this is kind of like that, but it's more like how a mobility concept becomes a project. And again, this becomes things like, and we call it project identification. And it's anything from your jurisdictional strategic plans, field observations, and we don't call them complaints. What we call them is voluntary field observations from the citizenry. But we've got citizen input, rider surveys, because it's multimodal. We're not just talking about roads. We also we want to make sure we touch transit and bicycle and pedestrian. When the developer is doing master plans and other things, they're required to do studies. All of that information sort of goes to our individual jurisdictions. And again, the different jurisdictions have a different way of sorting through all that. But it's all that data comes in, and after we've sort of identified the project, then that planning starts. In the universe of all of the different projects that are out there, you know, someone calling and say, hey, 115 is a mess, or hey, I really am having a hard time on Union or whatever. All of that comes in, and all of those studies where we sort of address those things sort of then come into that planning process. And that's where your different transportation folks do the yeoman's job of sort of putting that together and then taking those concepts and flushing them out more. So we've got the state long-range transportation plan for things that are on the state system, our regional long-range transportation plan, which you guys are going to see next month, studies, corridor plans, all those sorts of things all come together to sort of have a comprehensive overview of the things that we're looking to do as a region and create mobility. So that planning then becomes programming and project development. Programming is basically saying, yes, this is our priority, and therefore we want to put funds towards it. So for you all at the board level, did my voice just crack? The programming is basically what we're talking about when we are doing the TIP. That's actually getting the money there. Within your own individual jurisdictions, you have an annual budget process where you do a capital improvement program or CIP. So for your individual jurisdictional projects, you do that. At the state level, that would be the Transportation Commission. So project development is then when the individual jurisdiction then finally says, yes, we're going to prioritize this project, we're going to put funds towards it. They start doing their design plans and other right-of-way plans, individual project studies. And they start moving into the different construction and implementation as the plans get finished up. The programming project development kind of go back and forth because sometimes you'll start a project and you realize, oh my gosh, there's an old cemetery there. Well, all of a sudden that really cheap project becomes a super expensive project. Or you'll do the environmental work and you'll realize, oh, well, this drains into that and we have to have some mitigation there. So it kind of goes back and forth. I've never seen in my few years doing this where someone has said, well, this is the project budget and it's solid. And it actually happened. There's always something that comes up that will create that. So that's why it's kind of a little bit of a loop. And that's why sometimes you'll see jurisdictions come back and say, we need a TIP amendment, we need to get more money, both either through PPACG or PPRTA. Not necessarily that they didn't plan for something or that they made a mistake. It's just there are things out there that you don't know until you really start the process. This is a graphic that you saw last month, but again, it sort of goes through, we've got the studies and plans that identify the long-range plan that go into the TIP or the STIP if it's a state project. Projects that are in the first or the second year of the TIP or the STIP actually have funding associated with them. they had the design activities, which leads to construction, and then goes back to design if it isn't enough. It kind of goes back and forth till you actually, voila, actually have a project that the taxpayer can use for mobility. And again, trying to be kind of mode general here, this works with transit as well as it does with roadways. So the next thing I'm going to talk about is, well, now that we know what we were going to build, how do we actually fund it? Where does the money come from? So again, I just found these on the internet. Can you believe that?
Yes.
Ouch. Wow. So, but again, we'll pretty them up. But again, it is, how does the money leave the taxpayer, whether it's a tax or a fee or a permit or whatever? The money eventually comes from, leaves the citizen. What do we return as transportation professionals in the form of mobility? So the funding sources that we're used to, and again, try to make this a pretty good list, but I'm sure I forgot something, and again, that's my original caveat where I said not going to be able to sort of hit every jurisdiction. But we've got gas tax, which again, you're used to paying. You see it at the pump, but again, that's collected at the distribution center. Vehicle registration, I sometimes will slip and call it vehicle license tax, because that's what it was in Arizona, but here it's the vehicle registration tax, vehicle registration. Sales tax, some jurisdictions have sales tax, fees, fines, permits, tolls, transit fare box for transit, impact fees, property tax. I believe there's a mill at some of the counties that go towards transportation. Transfers from the general fund, those are the SB1s and the SB 267s or whatever the number is that we see from time to time, and of course grants. So kind of hitting how it leaves the taxpayer through whatever. Again, if you stop at a Quickie Mart or whatever it is and you buy a taxable item, again, different jurisdictions have the different rate of what is charged. 1 cent for PPRTA jurisdictions and 0.62 in Colorado Springs. I had Fountain on here, but after the election I didn't. I know some of it stayed and some of it didn't, so I figured it was best to kind of just take it off for now. I didn't think so. Wait, I just did, didn't I? I ruined it. But anyway, that money is collected. Again, it's on a taxable item, so the rules are different. Some things are not taxable, other things are. When you stop at that same Quickie Mart, but you go to the gas pump and you buy a gallon of gas, you pay 18.4 cents a gallon in federal gas tax and 22 cents a gallon in Colorado gas tax. And again, it is per gallon. So it doesn't matter if gas is $1 or $5, you're still paying that same cost per gallon. So again, as when we saw back in 2008 and 2009, when all of a sudden gas was going sky high all over the country, $4.50, $5 in California, and people were like, okay, well, how do I cut back on my fuel usage? Well, when you cut back on your fuel usage, that cuts back on the money that's available for transportation because it's based on a gallon sold, not on the actual amount, the cost of the gasoline. So I've got 2 slides here. One is how the federal dollars kind of move from your pocket back into projects under your feet or buses that you can ride. The first one is how the federal money goes. Again, as you purchase gasoline, that 18.4 cents goes into the Highway Trust Fund, the distribution of which is controlled by Congress, and they control that distribution through what is known as the Surface Transportation Bill. The current iteration of that is called the FAST Act. Sometimes you could hear that in previous iterations were like MAP 21, Safety Lou, ICE-T, you name it. After that money that sort of then sets out the funds that are going to be available through the USDOT, they get split back out to FTA and FHWA, depending if it's transit funds or roadway funds. And again, transit funds, Mountain Metro is the direct recipient here in Colorado Springs or this region for that. Outside of that urbanized area, it's the state of Colorado. But that then comes back to the form of projects, Pikes Peak Area Council Governments, what you all help us with the TIP and the long-range plan. That is the mechanism by which the money leaves the taxpayer pocket and then actually comes back into projects. If you didn't adopt the TIP or the long-range plan, that money could not flow because that's just the rule. So these are things when we talk about STP Metro, CMAQ, and TAP, are all these federal dollars that are funding flowing through back to be distributed within these different areas.
John,
and the MPOs are important.
Before you jump off of that, a great graphic, and I'm going down a little tangent here, but if you have $1 leaving my pocket as a taxpayer, it would be interesting to see how many cents come back to the state on average.
I can do that math, but I don't have that off the top of my head. But yes, we can do that. Good, thank you. For the state funds, again, you pay either the gas tax or the registration. That goes into the Colorado Highway Users Tax Fund, or HUTF. HUTF, yeah. The Colorado State Legislature controls that through the Colorado Revised Statutes. For the first 7 cents, it's a 65-35 split. For everything above the first 7 cents, it's about a 60-40 split. The 40 split goes to the local governments, which then comes back to the cities and counties.
22-18, county to cities.
22-18. And then the money that goes into the State Highway Fund, that's controlled basically through the State Transportation Commission from input from the STAC. That then gets distributed. If you've noticed, I've switched from the previous slide, which sort of had all the MPOs and the TPRs, Transportation Planning Regions, to the CDOT regions. These state funds, the main thing is the planning districts, and Karen Rowe, our district director, has a lot of say on what happens in Region 2. So those monies come into Region 2. We then provide our recommendations that then through Karen and the rest of CDOT go back up to the Transportation Commission. And so that's where, like last month, we did our list of priorities for the transit and everything else. That went up to the Transportation Commission for them to look at. Here, like I said, I had given this presentation to folks, and one of the things that came back was make sure that people understand that not all the money is eligible for everything, and there are certain things you just can't do. So basically, and again, I apologize, this is really hard to see, but the stuff in red is eligible for federal funds. Those are the federally aid roadway network. Those things in blue and black and others, those are not eligible for that. So sometimes when someone says, well, how come you did this road and you didn't do that road? Well, sometimes that's because El Paso County or Teller County, you're limited on the roads you're allowed to spend those funds on. And so even though you might have something that is a priority, you don't have the right kind of money to actually address that priority. And that's something that I think the citizens, I'm going to have to come up with a better way. I'm going to be maybe a real clever analogy that's somewhat comical so people will remember it. But I think the general public really doesn't understand that. They get really upset about something like, why did you do X instead of Y? Well, we're not idiots. There's actually a reason why we didn't do it. It's how do we explain that so that they understand. Moving into the next part, the fund sources over time. This is just sort of give you a general idea of where we're at. Again, at this point, I'm just going to be talking about these blobs. That's all you. This is the federal dollars that we receive. So when someone says, "Oh, we need the feds to come in and save us," or "We need more federal stuff," the federal portion of gas tax or funding that we receive is really a small portion of it. It's around $500 million as a state. The next thing, so the next is sort of that orange blob is motor fuel. See, I slipped back to my vehicle license tax. I apologize. That's the registration. And blue is the faster funds. And then the other two things are like other receipts and the bridge enterprise. But you can see that after the federal, what we provide here at the state level is basically a little bit 2 to 1. So we go from $500 million of federal to about over time about 1.5 billion with state resources. But you can see as we picked up faster and things, everything else is sort of level. So having the gas tax and things provide a level funding source, well, it's great that it's level, but when you're getting more people, and you're getting more need, but you have that same amount of money that has less buying power. So that's actually a bad thing. You'd want to see that grow over time. And this slide, and again, I know it's really difficult to see, but the takeaway from this is everything above the red line of what we've already talked about is when the state legislature has some sort of infusion that they've done over time. And you can see before the Great Recession of 2008, they were doing things. I think it was like Proposition C or something before my time. But they were doing something. Then the recession hit, and you notice the state legislature didn't provide any additional funding. So when you put together a funding mechanism by which you're reliant on the state legislature giving you extra money, well, it's great if they actually give you the extra money. But if they do not give you the extra money, like they are currently towards the end, and what we're dealing with now, that's when you have an issue. Probably when you need it the most is when it's not available. So that sustainable funding source is really what you're looking for. So finally, how much are we paying? Again, this is in generalities. If you're driving like a little scooter that gets 500 miles to the gallon versus if you're driving a Hummer, it's going to be different. Hummer, a little bit more gas. So again, I want to just reiterate that Colorado gas tax was last raised in 1991. Federal gas tax was last raised in 1993. And the price of gas as a percentage, again, fluctuates by the gallon. I'll probably take that slide out when we take it to the public. I'm not sure. There's a lot of great stuff there. This goes back to, Commissioner, what you were talking about. Is it 30 miles a gallon? These numbers here are the fleet. So if you're talking about current year, current model, the 30 miles per gallon is about right. If you're talking about the entire fleet, which has the older vehicles, right now the fleet is getting about 25 miles to the gallon. And again, it's only increasing again as the older cars, less fuel-efficient cars, are aging out of the fleet, and we're picking up more fuel-efficient cars. It's only going to increase. So right now, if you take the 20 cents a gallon and the 18.4 cents a gallon, so I say 22 cents a gallon for the state. So 40.4 cents in 1993 has the buying power of 23 cents today if you go by the standard inflation index. That's all things, including milk and stuff like that. But you don't use milk to build roads. You use concrete and steel and asphalt. So if you go to the Colorado Construction Cost Index, those goods actually have not fared as well. So that actually, that 40.4 cents only has an index power of 13 cents. So about a third. So again, if you want to say, oh, well, you're just kind of trying to make your argument, well, then 13.3 cents, I think it's worth saying that that's concrete and steel. But even if you want to just do regular old inflation, it's still 23 cents. So this is a quick thing that I would normally go through with somebody. I'll just do it real quick here. I say real quick, but I'm not going to be, right? But anyway, if you had a 1991 Honda Accord and you got 22 miles per gallon, for every 1,000 miles you would drive, you paid 18.3 cents in gas tax. And then I showed my math. If you still owed that car today, well, first off, you're really thrifty. But if you still own that car today, and you still were getting that 22 miles per gallon, you'd still be paying 18.3 cents per 1,000 miles because the gas tax hasn't changed, your gas mileage hasn't changed, you're still buying that same amount of gas. However, due to inflation, that 18.3 cents would be worth less than it would and give you only a buying power of 977. If you traded in that Accord for a 2019 Accord that's getting 25 miles to the gallon, for every 1,000 miles you drive, now you're only paying 16 miles. And by the way, with the buying power, that's only $8.60 or about half. And if you, again, you use the construction materials, asphalt and steel, it's only about $5.10. And if you trade that 2019 that older car in for an Accord hybrid that's getting 48 miles to the gallon, well, now I'll cut to the chase. The buying power is only about $4.48 or about 1/4 or 25%. Oh, by the way, if you use construction index, it's only a little less than $3. So again, and if you buy a 100% electric vehicle, and I think this goes through someone's road usage charge, that's where you get down to where you're not paying any income tax, but you do pay a $50 annual electric vehicle fee, $30 of which gets put into the HUTF. So how do you take this as an average? So the federal gas tax, according to FHWA, the average person, and again, your mileage may vary, they drive about 13,476 miles a year, and the average gas economy, again, according to EPA, is 24.9 miles per gallon, and the average person pays about $6 a month in faster fees. So I did all the math, and that ends up being about $365 per year per vehicle. And by the way, when you have that huge part of your bill, the specific ownership tax, that does not go into the HUTF. So about that is, so you're paying about $1 a day per vehicle, and if you're actually shopping in a jurisdiction that has a sales tax, it's about another 57 cents a day. Now again, depends on what you're buying and how often you go shopping, but that's just the average. I grabbed that from one of the sales tax brochures, and then I adjusted for inflation. So, are we keeping up? And I think you've all heard enough of me. I've stole this. Basically, it just says Colorado's at 40.4, and you can see compared to the other states, we're not as high. One of the comments I received was, "Hey, you show Colorado at the top of the chart. This is not a chart you want to be on the top of. It's probably sending the wrong message." So when we have the graphic artist change this, we'll flip this. But this I just stole off of, again, the internet. But again, it's been 28 plus years since Colorado has changed, indexed, or otherwise addressed the gasoline tax. And you can see a majority of other states have, and most of them within the last 6 years or so. And then finally, what sort of hole or what sort of needs do we have as part of the 2045 financial plan that, again, hopefully you'll see next month and adopt the month after? Of all the projects that we receive from the jurisdictions, we have about $6.8 billion in needs. It is important to stress that when the jurisdictions give us their lists, they're only allowed to give us the lists that are fiscally constrained. They can't ask for more money than what there is. So this isn't all other. I've already handicapped them when I say give me your list. They don't give me everything. They only give me the stuff that we can score and put through the system. So this is not everything. Your total estimated maintenance and operations is about $3.8 billion, and again, that's running the transits and everything. So the total needs out through 2045 for this region, $10.6 billion. Our total of reasonably expected revenue is about $6 billion. So we have a total estimated cost of unfunded projects about $4.6 billion. So
is that the COG or the MPO?
That is the MPO. And the MPO. So yeah. So
okay.
As it gets bigger, I apologize. Yes, thank you. So it's only, and when we look about that, it's only about 57% of the needs. That made that graphic for Tatiana Bailey in the UCS forum. So if it looks familiar. So this is the last slide, but it's like, again, when we talk about how do we address this, how do we come up with these funding needs, the issue is, well, if you raise this tax or you raise that tax or raise this fee or whatever, it's money out of our pocket. Well, this is from the TRIP, which is a national folks. They do this all over the country. Here's the sort of the cost out of everyone's pocket if you do nothing. So right now, Colorado Springs, the vehicle operating costs, on average, you're paying $702 more for poor roads than you are on good roads. So if you've ever bent a rim or lost a CV joint or something like that, you know that $702 is only the average. I think one of our AAA guys bent a rim and wanted to know how we could get a hold of someone at CDOT about that. So safety, that is the rate of what you're paying extra because of accidents, either directly or indirectly through insurance rate. And then congestion is the time you're spending stuck in congestion and just sitting there. I'm not even going to get into that congestion then also creates some sort of pollution that then probably also has an economic impact. I'll leave that for Sam. But again, for Colorado Springs, it's about, on average, $1,940 more that you're paying because of an inefficient and poor roadway network, according to the TRIP folks. Now, again, I don't think anyone's recommending that we raise the gas tax or put in a sales tax or anything that's going to cost everyone $1,940. But we could do something, and it probably be a net benefit to the average user of the system. And so with that, so like I said, I'm only going to take about a half an hour.
29 minutes.
I apologize. I thought I could do it faster.
Okay.
You're good with them?
Is that in the packet? Yeah, Cami?
It's not.
It is not.
Thank you. You'll send it out.
Last minute changes and
Yeah.
all that.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
You can send us this.
Cami?
Sure.
And I was going to suggest, I liked that slide with the one you mentioned that you might take out.
Oh, okay.
Particularly the linear graph of when over time we crossed that kind of deficit line.
It's in.
I like that one.
All right, thank you.
Questions, comments? I mean, you could have the same discussion, what does it cost to have an uneducated child introduced into society?
Yeah.
You know, you could do the same gap on a whole range of things, but pretty powerful. Thank you, John.
Thank you.
I don't think his graphics are that bad.
No.
Honestly.
No,
because
I think I got most of
you
that.
go to some of these presentations, and they all look alike after a while, and yours actually look a little bit different, so you're going to catch our attention better.
Okay, thank you.
So this will be available to everybody for local presentations sometime soon?
Yes. There will be shorter, there'll be like three, we'll probably do like 3 modules, and again, we'll clean it up some. I'm probably speaking for you, but feel free to, that sounds about right?
And then it'll be able for use. We'll send this out so you can look at it and have the information, but please wait to share it.
All right. Yeah, and as much, and again, I'm sure there's a thing in there, I'm sure I said something that made Wendy cringe or made Jennifer cringe. So I think, again, I'll have one more round of fact-checking, making sure that the things are right, and then we'll put it through there.
Okay.
But I think it's mostly right. And I think you all get the idea where we're at.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep. Anything else, Cami?
I want to hear the jingle on when the bill becomes a law in this context.
No,
I'm working on that. Thanks.
Too young.
Yeah, that's
I grew up on it.
All right. Let's see if we can still finish up in the next 30 minutes, 45 minutes maybe. We'll move on to item 6D, Transit Representative Report. Yolanda.
Thank you, Chair. Well, after that sober conversation, so the transit group met with Andy and John and Brian and Craig and myself and Sharon. We have a quarterly meeting. We met on November 4th. And I can't believe it's already been 3 months since I last talked about this. But I'm going to ask Brian to come up and summarize what happened in the meeting. And it's also in your packet.
Brian Vituli, come on up. Thank you.
Good morning. Brian Vituli, City of Colorado Springs with Mountain Metro Transit. As the council member mentioned, we had our second quarterly meeting. Councilmember Avila is the primary transit rep on the MPO board here, and Sharon is the alternate. So we try to have a conversation every quarter about transit issues. The agenda items that we dealt with last Monday were an update on the 2045 regional transit plan and the specialized plan. What came out of that plan, and also looking at some of the ridership statistics for our College Pass program. And then finally, we're trying to have a discussion or a conversation about implementing some transit-friendly planning tools or to provide them for our member governments. So for background, the 2045 transit plan, this is a process that started sometime earlier this summer. It's coordinated to be adopted when the 2045 regional transportation plan is in January. And both the transit plan and the specialized plan, it's a joint planning process. PPACG is funding the development of the specialized plan, and City of Colorado Springs is funding the transit plan. So it's a coordinated planning effort. We share resources, one consultant team, one public outreach team, and it worked really well for the 2040 plan 4 or 5 years ago, and we did it that way this time. So some of the primary themes and recommendations that are coming out of the 2045 transit plan are somewhat similar to what the 2040 plan expressed, but also going a little bit further. So again, they're recommending, let's focus on our existing service area, let's improve what we have before we expand, but knowing that there will be opportunities to expand our system, to grow our footprint, let's try to help subsidize those costs. Let's look, seek partnerships for funding those services. And that's exactly what we did when we started new Route 38 earlier this year to Memorial North and the Children's Hospital. This is well outside our existing service area, but we were able to get a Colorado Springs Health Foundation grant to help fund that. And also both hospitals are part of our corporate branding or corporate sponsorship program, so they're buying ads on our shelters and on our vehicles, so that helps defray some of the cost. Also, let's improve service hours, frequencies, kind of like what we've been doing the last several years, adding more reliability into the system. So things like signal prioritization, let's investigate using those to keep our buses more on time. Queue jumpers, like we're going to get as part of the West Side Avenue Action Plan project at Ridge Road and Colorado Avenue. So we're going to have there's a transit non-motorized plaza right at Ridge Road and Colorado Avenue. Our buses will pull out of traffic, and then we'll get the green light before the rest of traffic gets a green light, so we can get our vehicles back into traffic. So things like that really help keep our system on time and helps draw more riders to our system. Let's keep improving the user experience and improving accessibility. Let's try to give more options for customers to pay. Mobile ticketing, almost everybody has a smartphone nowadays. There are some really convenient ways to pay using your smartphone, and improving access to our system, sidewalk conditions and curb cuts that allow passengers to access our system. And finally, let's plan for innovations. We've heard a lot lately about first and last mile connections. Our system does cover a lot of territory, but a lot of times our customers have a hard time getting to a bus stop or getting from their bus stop to their job or their medical appointment. And let's keep investigating alternative fleet technology. We have Volkswagen settlement funds to purchase 3 electric buses. That's going to be part of our pilot program to see what the performance of that is with our conditions here, our operating environment. And that will tell us whether we want to go further in that direction. The specialized transit plan, the key themes and recommendations were to provide seamless focus on the customer, and also look at maximizing resources, such as shared training, shared vehicle maintenance, shared joint procurement, some items that could help that. On page 2 and page 3 of this item in your packet, you'll see another fine graphic created by John, so thank you, John. And there's a table of the recent performance of the College Pass program. So our College Pass program, we have 3 participants. That's Pikes Peak Community College, UCCS, and Colorado College. You can see for September, the latest month that we have ridership for, about 6,200 trips in the month of September for UCCS. Almost 1,100 for CC, and CC is a smaller student body, and their campus is in a pretty dense area, so there are a lot of alternative ways for people to get around, but those students are using our system. And then about 18,500 trips for PPCC. And, looking at John's graphic and this table here, you can see that the College Pass program is really successful. We're doing a lot of marketing, a lot of work with PPCC, UCCS, and CC to try to continue increasing the ridership in that program. But we're really pleased with what we've been seeing so far. And so for background, this is a $5 per student per semester fee. So all in, it's kind of like a technology fee that students pay for using technology during the semester, or a recreation fee to use a field house or a gym. So this is a $5 per student per semester fee that offsets some of the revenue that we lose from those students using our systems. And so this gives students full access to our system every day of the week for that semester. So it is really a pretty small fee, but I think it's laying the groundwork for a good improvement here.
I hear board members being shocked by that information, and I know RTD gives free service to students. My son goes to UC Boulder and can ride anywhere, and what's really nice about it is you are creating future transit users. They're getting used to the system. They're getting used to the idea of using other modes, and I know because my son takes it all the time now, he's going to be a lifelong user, which I think is great.
Right. No, that's great. And we're trying to take that a little further. There have been a lot of comments from members in the community about trying to do something similar with District 11 or some of the other school districts, and we're looking at doing a pilot with Wasson. It's an alternative school. It's a former high school of D11, but it's more of a they offer alternative education programs, and so the range of students there are from very young to not so very young, and so it's a nice way again to try to get younger students used to transit. We offer travel training for organizations or anybody who wants it on how to ride our system, and I think that's one of the barriers to a lot of people of trying transit is how do I get to a bus stop? How do I pay when I get to a bus stop and get on the bus? And how do I know where to get off? And so that travel training really helps put users at ease. So it's a great program that we hope to expand further. Councilmember Avila talked about the importance of marketing campaigns. And as I just mentioned, we're really working hard with the colleges to keep improving on the College Pass program. But there's some, other innovative ways that we can reach out to people to help spread the word. And then finally, we talked about, Andy Gunning and John mentioned that perhaps this could be an effort that kind of gains traction here at PPACG and trying to create some type of toolbox by pulling transportation planners and land use planners together, some type of toolbox that all the member governments can use to include transit when the development process comes up, and rather than building new development and realizing that there's not transit accessibility or sidewalks or curb cuts. So it's something, a useful tool that we think the community could benefit from. Councilmember Avila, anything I missed?
I think that's great, Brian. Thank you for that presentation. And I did want to stress that because, and I said this last time, when we're looking at new developments, we talk about how we really don't have to put dollars into it. It's not going to come to fruition, if it does, for at least 10 years. And so then when we finally get into those developments, they're not ready for transit. And I get that things are going to be changing a lot in the future, but I'm so glad that we're doing this now, because even though we're only 10% of the PPACG budget, it's important to keep transit on the front burner. And as you were talking about the schools, I was thinking about the military installations, and maybe we can have some type of partnership with all of our military installations as well. So thank you, Brian, and that's it for our report this quarter.
Thank you.
Any questions from the board, comments? Oh, Andy?
Yeah, the marketing is a great idea. One line in there caught my attention, which was the PPCC plush version of their mascot riding the bus. And I confess I didn't know what the mascot was. Doing a quick Google check. What is that? I mean,
Oh, I thought you said CC.
PPCC.
I don't know what.
So I don't know what that critter is.
PPCC's mascot is an aardvark.
It's an aardvark. Okay.
We had a campaign with Arnie the aardvark.
Well,
that
watch
was,
out for that.
riding the bus and.
That's quite
Yeah.
That's quite a picture. But it also reminded me, though, of Joe Gabler's did a rolling town hall on the bus, which was intriguing. So it's kind of a cool idea. That would not work in District 6 because it doesn't cover it. There's very little transit in District 6. But those are very innovative ideas to come up with and try to push that. And one of the things we've done in Colorado Springs is try to push for transit-oriented development, to try to push exactly what Councilor Avila is talking about, prep the area for transit, because if you don't have it, it's really hard to get it going. But anyway, very nice report.
Great.
Well, just quick follow-up on the military comment. The conversation with CDOT and the VA is still continuing. Got an email this week from David Kretzinger, estimated the cost of a missed VA appointment is about just under $300 per missed appointment. If that's because of transit, now you have an economic incentive. The VA has an economic incentive to make sure that retired soldier gets to a VA appointment. So, hope you're still part of that conversation.
Yes, and we had a meeting set up several weeks ago.
Yeah.
A follow-up meeting, and that got canceled. But I believe
Okay.
folks from the VA are trying to reschedule that. But
Yeah, we're trying to get Michael Kilmer into that conversation as well for the VA.
Yep.
Yeah. Great, thank you.
All right, thank you.
All right, on to our action items, and finally, it's now 11:15. Nominating committee appointment, this is nominating for the executive board, for chair, vice chair, secretary, treasurer, and second vice, what I missed. There's a little discrepancy on the people of vacancy. Tyler?
I just wanted to correct my responses on the table. I'm not interested and I am willing to serve.
I thought so, thank you. Thank you, my question. And Andy, are you open to an appointed position, or are you open to serve on a nominating committee?
Oh, okay. There was a different memo that came out.
Yeah.
What's in the packet is not correct.
Okay.
Okay, so what was sent out in addition, interested in the nominating committee, not for any other position.
Right, so the five are Andy Pico, Tyler Stevens, myself, Ken Dre, and Bruce Davis. Bruce is not here. I would not serve on a nominating committee. Without objection, I'd like to appoint Andy Pico, Tyler Stevens, and if you're open, Ken, to that nominating committee, please. Sure. 3-member committee. It lets you decide your own chair and organization and objectives. And if you could meet sometime, put together a slate before the December meeting for consideration by the full board. Any questions, any objections? Do we need to appoint that? I think I can do that.
And I think it does also suggest a vote by the board in the bylaws, but.
To appoint the nominee, well, I'll make a nomination.
It says for you to nominate and the board approve.
I will nominate that board and would ask for a motion to approve that slate of nominating committee.
So moved.
There's a motion, second, discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. We have a nominating committee. Okay. And any other corrections to that from around the board, from around the table on positions for which you're willing to serve? Any other corrections?
The handout
Andy?
that just came around was the corrected, hopefully that's the final version that we heard as of last week, but if there's any changes, I guess speak now.
Okay. We do have a set of bylaws that would govern that nominating committee process. Okay, and then just a reminder that slate will come out for consideration in December, that the vote will be making at the January annual meeting, which precedes the regular monthly meeting of the PPACG. So first order of business will be elect a new executive board for the full board. Questions, comments? Great, move on to item 7B, action item 2019 update the 208 Water Quality Management Plan. Samantha.
Good morning, board members, and thank you for your time today. I'm Samantha Bailey. I'm the environmental planner here at PPACG. Last month, our contractor, Brown & Caldwell, gave a brief overview on the 2019 Regional Water Quality Plan. It's also known as the 208 Plan, and I hope in front of you in the memo is a hyperlink as well as the first 40 pages of the plan, and I really hope that we could approve it today. The plan provides an overview of water quality health within the 5 watersheds of our region. Updates to the plan include population forecasts, regional policies, and recommendations on how to improve water quality health, to name a few. Last month, during the presentation, I got some feedback on the report, and I wanted to provide a quick follow-up. There was a request to reach out to water planning agencies throughout the region beyond the representatives that may be more involved through our water quality management plan. A few board members provided me recommendations, like the Fountain Creek Watershed District and the State Department of Public Safety, just to name a few. I found that these groups were already aware of the plan, which is awesome, but they didn't provide further edits. But to go along with that, I do have presentations scheduled in 2020 to introduce the plan and start conversation on how to coordinate those efforts listed within the 208 plan. Another request was made last month to coordinate an introductory water learning session for PPACG board members to better understand the regional water quality stance and the efforts within the 208 plan. I'm going to collaborate with the Pikes Peak Regional Water Authority to begin planning this event for you in early 2020. This event really coincides well with the grant requirements for the 208 plan. Once the plan is approved by CDPHE in May of 2020, the next steps is to start outreach and implementation efforts to show that we're following through with the recommendations provided in the plan. So that'll be kind of the next steps, and I hope to provide you status reports throughout the year on what we're doing when it comes to outreach and education with the 208 plan. Are there any questions that you may have for me?
Questions for Sam? Any discussion on the plan? Andy, any comments?
No, as Sam mentioned, we took the feedback we got last month when we had the presentation on the plan and made some minor modifications, but the different organizations that you suggested we connect with, we're now coordinating with, and most of them, they did know about the plan effort already, so we're looking for a recommendation for approval today so we can forward it on to the state. They have to approve it by May.
The administrative rule hearing is May 15th of 2020,
Yeah.
so we
and
have
they
some
need
time.
there's a bit of a lag time where they need time to review it and make sure they're comfortable
Yeah.
with the formatting and
Yeah.
content and all that good stuff.
Sam, of all our member governments included in the working committee, all of our member governments around the table here included?
Unfortunately, no. We don't, I believe, have Teller County represented, but they are aware of the 208 plan.
They were all given the option, and anybody that runs a sanitation wastewater district within our overall region was given the opportunity to be at the table as well. Most took us up, but not all.
So notice you have Karen Munzer. Karen's in our public health department. I don't know, was there discussion with our public works or no? Invited?
Not that I'm aware of. I did reach out to Teller County Public Health, and they were interested in reviewing the 208 plan, so I'm still
That's
waiting
Karen.
for the... Yep.
Yep. Okay.
Yep. But not Public Works, no.
Would you be open to adding a person?
Absolutely.
Okay, so I'll get with you for the contact
Thank
information
you.
there.
I
And then Whittle Park,
County, I'm for the city of Woodland Park too, our public works guy.
Kip Wiley.
I don't know why, Kip Wiley, I don't know why he didn't respond, but he should be part of that also. And I'll reach out to him.
I know he was early on in some of the initial meetings before Sam came on board, but maybe not as much more recently.
Not that I'm aware of.
Yeah, but we should connect. Yeah.
Please.
Okay,
Yes.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Yep. And if you have any feedback or recommendations on how to reach out to groups that I might not be aware of, please let me know. I'm more than open to that.
okay. Any other comments, questions? All right, we're looking for a motion to adopt.
So moved.
So motion, second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. That passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, great work on that. And Andy, thanks for bringing that back up. I mean, we were kind of way behind the power curve, so bringing the 208 fund back to the front. 2020 work program. Jessica.
Good morning again, board members. Jessica McMullen, your Policy and Communications Manager. So as you saw last board meeting, the 2020 work program is being presented to you. Since you last saw it, the CAC did review it and found a couple of small edits, technical edits. There were no substantial changes. And then beyond that, at the work session on Friday, there was one question that was raised about how PPRTA is listed in here, because they are not a PPACG program. They are merely administered by us. So the change, which is not in your packet, that I would like you to also approve, is we moved PPRTA under administrative services because that is their role within PPACG. We kept their information just so it was an information item so that the board knew, but so that it also very clearly stated that PPRTA, we handle their administration, but their programs and goals are individually handled by the PPRTA board.
Okay. Makes sense. Questions, comments for Jessica? All right, we're looking once again for a motion to adopt the 2020 work program.
Move to adopt.
There's a motion, second, discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. It passes. Thank you, Jessica. All right, and item 7D, allocating procedures for carryover funds for up to $250,000. Jody, or who's going to take this one? Andy?
I'm going to ask Jody to come up to the podium. Really good discussion during the board workshop on Friday, and good recommendation, thoughtful recommendation by the RAC. Maybe Dave Betzler, if you want to come up as well. I know there have been some follow-up conversations among RAC members, and let me turn it over to Jody and Dave.
Okay.
So this was a follow-up to several pieces of business across several months with the RAC, and we sought a finalization of that vote. The RAC did approve the allocation process up to $250,000 for staff. If that carryover were to be over $250,000, then it would mean a reconvening of the TRS, the Technical Review Subcommittee. And during the work session last week, several members of the committee, the board members that were there, asked us to review that process, go back to the RAC so that we can expedite the overall process of the carryover funding. Technically, we wait for a letter from the state with that funding amount. However, we have been asked between the RAC and the AAA staff to reevaluate our processes so that we might move sooner. And essentially, we are looking to reverse the process because our finance manager, Casey, can estimate very closely what that carryover funding amount will be. We are in the process of reevaluating our procedures internally. They do not affect the funding source. They do not affect anything coming from the state, but we are reevaluating the procedures internally so that we can allocate those funds, be ready when the option letter comes from the state, so that we can re-engage with our technical review subcommittee and move much quicker in the overall process. So it is a process that we've been asked to review and recreate that process so that we might get that funding out to our providers sooner rather than later. So this was put on the agenda previously, and we are abiding by the recommendation of the board members at the work session to put a hold on this and come back with some alternatives.
I'm sorry, you want to put a hold on this, or you want to proceed with an action here today?
Do you want
Get a study.
We're working on the study now
And it'll
to,
really be a quick study, too, I think is what we're really saying. The established process procedures for the Technical Review Subcommittee of the Region of the Council of the RAC is really hand in glove with the AAA. So there really isn't any major change to it. It's a matter of trying to make sure that the framework that currently exists for handling all funding requests that come in from the providers, that it really is flexible enough to handle over that carryover piece in the last few months of the fiscal year. So it's really, it's just a study, if you will, a review, a study, and then we'll be able to come back in very, very quickly here within the next month, next meeting, to be able to say, okay, here's what we're going to actually do with it. So it's really a review or a study, I think, is what we're really saying here, rather than an action specifically.
Mr. Chair?
Okay, go ahead. Yeah, sorry, Andy.
Yeah, as we discussed at the work session here, we'd really like to go back and take another look at the different options as to how to come back with that. I won't belabor the point too much, but what I'd move is the motion would be to return this for consideration by the RAC.
Okay. Motion to table to return to staff action.
To return to staff action.
Okay.
Second?
Okay, there's motion and second. Discussion?
Just a comment, I want to make sure everybody, not only at the table, but in the room, understands the region. The reason we have to move urgently on these funds sometimes is if we don't allocate those funds by the end of the calendar year, then we could potentially have to turn them back into the federal government, and we don't want to lose up to, I think it was $800,000 or something?
it's been consistently about $500,000.
$500,000, so we don't want to lose those funds, so we're trying to figure out a way to just move a little bit more nimbly. And I really appreciate the fact that RAC you guys really want to be involved in that process and those decisions, because anytime citizens are involved, it's always better.
So, Jody, why is the limit 250, not 500? What's the basis for that number level?
What we're trying to do there is just trying to make sure that it moves rapidly through the system. If it's at that $500,000 level, that is what we've been looking at before, as from the Technical Review Subcommittee. That's where the ceiling was, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And that would, yeah, so the 500,000 there was was setting the cap level, if you will, and leaving it up to the AAA then to go ahead and take care of any funds below that. But then just basically what you're saying, as far as we want to make sure that the citizens had a role, or at least from the advisory council perspective in the technical subcommittee, we can actually provide sort of just a hand in glove with them to say, okay, yes, we've reviewed this, and the $250,000 is a reasonable amount that we want to make sure that the citizens are aware of what's going on as well, not just saying blank check, here it is. Is that clear?
I get it. I just want to make sure we can allocate below 250, but then we lose, because it's more than 250, we lose at year end.
Mr. Chair, I mean, that was one of the concerns we raised, was if we put 250 in now and it came in at 500, then we're back into the other process anyway. So we really kind of wanted to go back and scrub the process and have some, for example, as we in the military are familiar with, say, an unfunded priority list, have something like that ready so they can come in there and they can take a quick scrub. So it may be a, administrative action within the staff, but we wanted to make sure that they had something to go on that we had all approved. And I think we came up with 3 different options in the work session, just in our couple of minutes of discussion. So we really wanted to kick it back and take a thorough scrub. And this is not a time-critical issue for us for next month or anything. So, these funds aren't going to show up in, next month. So that's kind of the rationale. Return it for further review.
Okay.
And it may be changing the process for next year, looking at what some of the other AAAs do in the area. How do they work a little bit quicker? And maybe the answer is a combination of a RAC review, and then Andy can still administratively approve it, where it doesn't have to wait and come back to the board again, but definitely want the citizen involvement component in that. So we'll just see.
Okay. Well, we've got a motion, a second. That's all discussion. Any further discussion? All those in favor of moving this back for staff action, say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Back to you guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Item 8, discussion. I think we've been talking a lot. We'll move on to 9A, reports, military installations. Let's see, we'll start.
I'll start. Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the board. Melissa Porter with the Air Force Academy.
Yep.
I only have 2 items to brief. The first being our Falcon football team only has 3 games remaining in the season. The next 2 games are away games this weekend against Colorado State and the 23rd of November against New Mexico. The Falcons return home on the 30th of November where they play Wyoming. So bundle up and come out and cheer on your Falcon football team. The kickoff is at noon. And then I have a brief update on the PFOA testing of the private drinking water wells in the Woodman Valley neighborhood south of the Academy. 42 of the 43 private drinking wells that were identified by the Air Force for potential PFOA exposure have been sampled, and preliminary results have come in. Those results have been shared with the homeowners. However, we are waiting on validated results before we share those results with the public. We expect those validated results to come back any day now, so we're looking forward to getting that information out to the public. And that is all I have, unless there are any questions.
Around the table? Nope. Ron?
Mr. Chairman, board members, thank you for the opportunity to comment. Just a couple items from Schriever Air Force Base. Since the last PPACG, Schriever cut the ribbon for the newly established Cyber Defense Correlation Cell Space, a one-of-a-kind cell in the Air Force. The cell will operate at the enterprise level by detecting and responding to cyber threats against Air Force Space Command mission systems. Also added to Schriever's long list of tenant units is the Joint Task Force Space Defense. Air Force General Raymond, the U.S. Space Command Commander, along with Army Brigadier General Thomas James, the Joint Task Force Space Defense Commander, recognized the establishment of the JTF-SD during a ceremony on 21 October. JTF-SD is one of 2 subordinate commands under the newly formed U.S. Space Command. And the final item I'll mention is Schriever is hosting a Science, Technology, Engineering, and Math Day with about 150 students on the 14th of November. The children will come out to Schriever to enjoy a fun-filled day of STEM-type events and activities, highlighting the importance of STEM within the missions that we execute at Schriever Air Force Base. Unless there is any questions, those are the items that I've got to talk about today.
Questions for Schriever? None? Thank you. I'm on to Peterson Air Force Base. Good morning.
Thank you. Lieutenant Colonel Mike Brandon from Peterson Air Force Base. Thanks for the opportunity to come participate. So a couple of updates from Peterson. First, a thank you. Mark Shuffle Road, our East Gate exit, has that traffic light in now. We're still working with the city to improve some signage for that. We did have an accident, a red light runner the first day, but that's because it's new. So as to be expected, but that has been our only incident. So overall, great improvement, more safety for people exiting out of the base, and then, of course, travel on Mark Shuffle. Our North Gate traffic study has been awarded, so we're working with Brian Potts of the team, PPACG, to incorporate what we do with our North Gate. North Gate, of course, is that command entrance to Peterson Air Force Base, and so now we have our award on, we could share that company away, perhaps get some synergies on one business doing both sides of the study. Obviously, we can't do that outside work, but PPACG helping us pull those efforts together. Tied to that, of course, we're all still waiting on the announcement, so no announcement on U.S. Space Command. However, as people are coming in, they are doing more work on Peterson, and we are supporting that command greatly, but still waiting the final basing decision for that. Last couple of things I'll just throw out as we work with joint land use study. Land use on our West Gate has also changed. FedEx has opened, so they're using part of that exit now. No big impact to us. It's worked out really well sharing the road with FedEx, but it does tie into the Stewart Avenue and that divergent diamond design, so we're definitely excited as that work continues to see what happens there. And just an awareness, we're going to start working with the city, county, with CDOT, as NORAD Northcom is looking to do maybe a different snow call. If you've noticed, all the installations are doing the same snow closures together, so we've been coordinating that. I'm the one for Peterson that's been on those calls. And you might see NORAD, Northcom, different mission set, protecting the homeland. So they are researching, perhaps doing their different call, which would be 1,500 people coming onto base, even when the roads are bad. So we'll look at snow priority clearance with that. So we've started initial discussions. We'll see where General Shaughnessy and NORAD, Northcom goes with that. I've got a meeting this afternoon to continue that discussion. Without any other questions, that's what I have.
And other comments? Terry?
I wanted to tell you all that this is my last meeting. My term at the MAC is over in December, and I'll be out of town for the December COG meeting. But I first got involved with PPACG in 1981 when I was the county administrator, and I continue to be impressed by the great staff that PPACG has under Andy's leadership and all of the dedicated service that you all, as representatives of your entities, contribute to our community. And I've been honored to participate, and I'll miss all of you. Thank you.
Wow. Terry, thanks for your service. I really appreciate your connection and all that you've done for 1981. I can't do the math. That's almost 30 years, right?
40.
40 years, okay. Wow. Wow. Thank you. Okay. Let me just say how much we appreciate our service for our veterans. Yet, of course, earlier this week was Veterans Day. Many veterans seated around the table here, too. We just want to thank you for your service to our country. And please pass it on behalf of the Board of Directors to all those who serve with you. Thank you. Move on to the Transportation Advisory Committee report. Any updates? No. John?
I'm taking too much time. The memo is in your packet. Are there any questions?
Any comments? We did one presentation, which I did talk briefly with Mr. Perez, and those comments are also in the board minutes. So, thank you. Okay, Community Advisory Committee. Any comments there? Sharon, go ahead. Thank you. Come on up. We got time.
I got it. Okay. I'll make this really quick. Jessica already alluded, we did have a few changes to the 2020, but they were very minor. So the other thing that I would like to do is that we are going to have, again, Jessica's recommendation, and I agree with this, because our CAC meeting would be on Thanksgiving Eve. That's probably not going to work real well. So we are going to have a joint November-December meeting on the 4th of December. And that'll be the last one for this year. And at that particular point, we would like to invite all of you to come in around 4:30, and we're going to have treats and that type of thing, and join us with some treats. With that, I think we're looking, of course, at our, we will have a new elected board in January, and we're working right now to get people on that. So that's basically all I have. Do you have any questions?
Questions for Sharon? Thank you very much. Appreciate it for your service. All right, move on to RAC, Regional Advisory Committee. Pardon me, Mobility, pardon me. Right over the top, just moving on. I am sorry. Yes.
Hi, everybody. I'm Miley Gray, Mobility Coordinating Committee. The minutes are in your packet. I just wanted to let you know that November will be the last meeting of the year, so because December is like right around Christmas, our December meeting, so we won't have a meeting in December. And the November meeting is the annual potluck and volunteer driver recognition ceremony or celebration that we have. So all of our members are nominating people right now. And so I want to also invite you, and since it's a potluck, if you just bring a little dish, make something, I don't know, come on over. on the fourth Tuesday of the month at 9:30 here.
Fourth Tuesday of
I think
November?
that's, no, I'm lying. It's, it's going to be November 26th.
26th,
So
Tuesday.
yeah, so
Time?
it's right before Thanksgiving, 9:30
9:30 a.m.
here.
Okay.
And so come on down and celebrate the volunteer drivers. And the nominations and voting for elections will
Yeah.
also take place in January because November's too busy.
Yeah, and I would encourage board members, if you can make it, come to those events, just thank all those who serve.
Yeah, because that'll be a really fun morning. So please do. Oh, they're always fun, at the meetings. So come on anytime. But
Good.
okay,
Thank you.
Ina.
Thank you, Miley.
Oh, did you have questions?
No questions? All right. Regional Advisory Committee, Dave.
So you have the report before you. You have the report before you, so the only thing I'd add is that working with the new director, Jody, and we've come up with the idea to have the RAC leadership, the chair and the first and second chairs, get together with the staff before the RAC meeting so that we have sort of an informal time when we can kind of talk about where we are, where we're going, and see if we can move things forward. It's just a good coordination thing. So that's the only other addition that I'd add to what's in your minutes right now. So are there any questions?
Questions for Dave? See none? No, thank you. I appreciate that. CDOT update, Karen Rowe had to leave. She had an early appointment. Is any other updates from CDOT? Wendy, anybody from your, nope? Okay. We'll forego our CDOT meeting today. Statewide Transportation Advisory Committee, I can keep it really brief. Could talk for a very long time. This is the agenda for last week at STAC. Just highlight, too, the National Highway Freight Program was discussed. Greg Fulton, the president of Colorado Motor Carriers Association, talked about freight program statewide. We also talked about the statewide plan update. The interim report was released by DTD Director Rebecca White. You probably have heard some public comment on that. This was the results of a statewide visit, all 64 counties, tens of thousands of inputs, and it's now out for interim comment as to a basis for the long-range plan for the state of Colorado. A couple of really brief comments. Anything else from Johnny? Andy, thing of note? Okay, move on then to Executive Director's report. Andy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just two things real quick, and I'll channel Karen Rowe here for just a moment. Everybody heard we got a U.S. Build grant?
Yes.
That's a huge community accomplishment. Thank you to CDOT especially for taking the lead, but all the jurisdictions. El Paso County had a valuable role in this, City of Colorado Springs, City of Fountain, all the jurisdictions, really, the military installations. So that's a really big deal. We finally can see money coming where we can make improvements on Highway 94 out to Schriever, improvements on I-25 down by Fort Carson, the Gate 19, Charter Oak Ranch Road connection into Fort Carson. So what an awesome accomplishment. Karen did mention that they've got a tentative date for some kind of a celebration or ribbon cutting or a shovel turning event, Tuesday, November 26th. I don't know if that's going to conflict with the MCC meeting yet or not. I don't have a time for that yet, and I don't have a location, but tentatively looking at Tuesday, November 26th. More details to follow. As soon as we find out, we'll make sure we get that out to everybody. But what a huge accomplishment. So everybody's pretty excited about that. Second thing I'll mention is following up on the STAC report you just gave, Mr. Chairman. I know we're going to have a conflict with the STAC meeting in December. We'll have a bunch of conflicts in 2020, so we'll need to look at shifting our board workshop dates on Fridays. But we know we've got a conflict coming up next month. Our normal date would be December 6th for our workshop, but that's the same day as the next STAC meeting. So we'll reach out and see if we can find another day that week, ideally, either Wednesday afternoon the 4th, and maybe we can get that to be in sync somewhat with the CAC meeting that they're going to have later in the afternoon. So either Wednesday, December 4th, or Thursday, December 5th for the next board workshop meeting. So we'll be in touch later today or tomorrow to see if we can find a date that's not a huge conflict for everybody.
Very good. And what's driving that? You may know the STAC agenda has moved from the fourth Friday now back to the second Friday of each month. That's in order to better synchronize the STAC advisory to the Transportation Commission, which meets the third week. They were kind of desynchronized. So, Dick, you had a comment?
Yeah, I was just going to say the week that you're looking at in December is a bad week because CCI has their winter conference, which happens to be in Colorado Springs, plus the Hot Topics in Healthcare has their conference in Denver, which is Thursday and Friday. So it's...
Well, the CCI conference ends at noon on the 4th. So maybe the afternoon of the 4th would fit with commissioners. We're going to be in town anyway, so.
Okay, so if we met maybe before, the board workshop was before then, early afternoon?
Early afternoon. We wrap at noon on the Wednesday, the 4th.
Okay.
So.
All right. We'll put our heads together, then we'll blast something out.
Yep.
Yeah.
Good.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, quickly around the member entity announcements. Neil?
Yeah, quickly, Woodland Park, two of our best events, Holiday Home Tour on the 6th and 7th of December, sponsored by Tweeds. Great event. And that night on the 7th is our annual Christmas parade with fireworks. And if you want to see a great community come together and be part of it, it's just a great night of refreshment and celebration of certainly our community and Christmas time, lots of kids, and lots of fun to be there. So remember those two, 6th and 7th of December. Thank you.
That morning, the 6th starts off with a free pancake breakfast. We generally serve about 1,000 breakfasts to kids with Santa on the morning of the 6th of December at the Cultural Center of Woodland Park. Great. Holly, what's in Paso?
I have nothing to report.
Okay, around the table, Cammie? Deb?
I just wanted to reiterate Andy's comments about the build grant. It really did take a lot of people, but in particular, actually, I think she just left, but I wanted to give a shout out to our county engineer, Jennifer. She's in the back hiding. But Jennifer really carried the water on pulling that application together and coordinating with the other entities that will benefit from that, and worked that with CDOT. So, I mean, I think that's just a shining example of what this organization can do, and the conversations that kind of start here and then get put together logistically by great staff. So thank you to Jennifer and anybody else who was involved in that project.
Park County, Dick, anything? Green Mountain Falls, Ken, Manitou, Springs? Okay, I think we have our meeting scheduled. For a late start, we didn't do too bad. It's 11:20. We're adjourned.
Made it.
You didn't have that John guy speaking for half hour. There we go.
Okay, so when's your surgery scheduled for your back surgery?
Well, I can actually, I have steroid shots in January 21st. First day they would do surgery. I know a lot of